Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome. We have a little feedback. Give us 1 second. There we go. Erev Tov, everyone. Chodesh Tov. I'm Rabbi Adina Lewidis of Sha'ar. Welcome to the first class cabin of our Armchair Pilgrim Supper Club as we take off for Baghdad. I'm just managing the gate as people keep coming in. So we're going to start tonight with a couple of words of welcome to everyone, and then we'll get moving with our takeoff for Baghdad. As we do this, you'll forgive me, I just keep admitting people who are joining us a few minutes late. So the world is all but closed to leisure travelers. Our bodies are grounded wherever we may be, but our minds and our souls are as free to soar as ever. Travel is a big component of Sha'ar Community's programming. We run trips all over the world, including in North America, every year. And we use our trips as settings for experiential Jewish learning, for personal growth and transformation, as well as for community building. Now, not being able to run trips now has been it's been disappointing and frustrating for us at Sha'ar, but we're using the time productively to research and to develop new itineraries. And during one travel-oriented discussion that I was having with our VUD member, Debbie Lerner, who I believe is traveling tonight with us to Baghdad, we imagined what virtual travel could look like for the community during the pandemic. And thus was born the idea for the Armchair Pilgrim Supper Club. My growing friendship with Rav Chaim Ovadia, a creative, courageous, and masterful scholar with expertise in Mizrahi and Sephardi Jewish life, that led to the details. And the support from Penny Raffaeli brought it all together. And our beloved Dan Nadel's musical enrichment of these virtual itineraries is the icing on the cake. While physically grounded, over the next 3 months, we'll travel to places that we might not actually ever have the chance to physically journey to, but are important for us to visit. Not just new destinations, but also new opportunities to bridge the Sephardi, Mizrahi, and Ashkenazi worlds of which we are all a part, to add critical dimensions to our commitment to diversity, not just beyond the Jewish world, but also deep within the Jewish world. New opportunities to recognize the textured story of our people and to feel more at home in more places across the Jewish world. I want to lift up and acknowledge the American Sephardi Federation and their extraordinary Jewish Experience website as resources that we'll be sharing with you over the coming weeks as well. So now, before we get started on our introduction to Baghdad, let's make our cocktail, our citrus pomegranate arak mojito, and we'll get on our way. Here's what we're going to do really quickly. If you haven't done it already, I'm going to take my fresh mint. I'm going to muddle it lightly just to aerate it. I'm going to pour in my arak. I'm going to add some ice. I'm going to add some pomegranate and a little more mint. I'm going to mix that up. I'm going to add my pomegranate juice with my citrus and blood orange juices, my lime. I'm going to mix it again. I'm going to put a little more ice into my mojito glass here. And I need the top right over there. Thank you. I'm going to add a little more garnishing of a little more mint. I'm going to pour this right into there we go. And I'm going to top it off with a little sparkling water. And here we go. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
And with that, Rav Chaim.
Thank you, Dini, for the beautiful introduction and the lovely idea. I also prepared my own drink. I'm not good with blending drinks, so this is a sort of a drink of choice in the Iraqi community. See this? It's called chai. L'chaim. I always find it, entertaining when I go to Starbucks and they offer chai. It's all kind of this creation. But chai really means tea. Um, and Iraqis love their tea very dark and sweet. So when I was a kid, I thought the adults are drinking hot Coca Cola, and then I realized no, it was actually tea. Um, so as Dini said, I'm going to uh, take you as much as I can into a little journey to Baghdad, a place where I have never been to. So it's a bit challenging. However, I've heard a lot of Baghdad to an extent like I feel almost I grew up there. My father was born in Baghdad. His family was from a city near Baghdad called Samarra that is now, I think, has all but been destroyed by ISIS, unfortunately. And then he grew up in Baghdad and migrated to Israel at the age of 17. I'll tell you all about it later. My mother was also born in Baghdad, but came to Israel at the age of 3 weeks. Um, so they met in Israel. I was born in Israel, but I grew up hearing Arabic at home, hearing stories about Baghdad, occasionally also being very excited when we were able to find in the market something that came from Baghdad, mainly dates. Uh, Dates in bulk coming from Baghdad. It was really they were really had a special flavor and carried with them the aroma of the sort of the homeland for my family. There were the candies. There was this a candy maker in Petah Tikva that until today Iraqi Jews from all over the world, when they visit Israel, they know you have to stop in Petah Tikva, in the old shuk, go to Abu Daoud and get the Iraqi candies with strange names like Ba'aba Qadrasi and Zangula. So this is delicious. When you go to Israel, make sure you make a stop there. Um, but let's talk a little bit about Baghdad. About Iraqi Jews. Um, I think that uh, more than once someone told me that he didn't know that there were Jews in Iraq or that there were Jews in Baghdad. Um, so were there Jews in Iraq? Yes. For how long? Probably 2,600 years or something like that. 2,700 years. As a matter of fact, maybe even further back. The Our patriarch Avraham, according to some traditions, lived in Iraq. I mean, there's a debate about this. Where exactly did Avraham come from? If you're a Turkish Jew, you'll say he's from Turkey. If you're a Syrian Jew, you'll say he was from Syria. Uh, if you're an Iraqi Jew, you will say he's from Iraq. But for sure, he was from somewhere in Mesopotamia. Nobody says he came from Poland or Lita or Lithuania or anything like that. But Jews as a community lived in Iraq unfortunately, since 586 of the Common Era. That's the year that Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first temple of Jerusalem and took the majority of the Jewish population captives to Babel. This is when the Psalm Al Naharot Bavel Sham Yashavnu Gam Bachinu, by the rivers of Babylon we sat down and cry when we remembered Zion. Then they returned to Eretz Israel, but despite the permission the Jews received from Cyrus to go to Israel and build the temple, only about 40,000 people decided to do this migration. The rest of them said, we'll just stay here until the kids finish high school, maybe graduate from college, maybe have their own children's bar mitzvah, and so on and so forth. And the community just kept growing in Bavel. And there was, of course, some kind of contention between the community in Eretz Israel and the community in Babylonia. People traveled all the time for pilgrimage during Second Temple period. They would come to bring sacrifices to visit Israel. People would travel back. At one point, unfortunately, the name Babylonian became a nickname for any annoying person. You know, they've those Babylonians, and there were stories about Babylonian rabbis who migrated to Israel just to be punched in the face in the streets. There were some very unpleasant incidents. It was a, so you could say, a war about hegemony and who's in control of the Jewish world and who is the authentic Jew. Things that, of course, do not happen today. Thank God, right? Today, there's no such tension between different streams of Judaism in Israel and the diaspora. We all live in peace and harmony. But anyway, back in the day, that's how it was. The Jewish community in Bavel started flourishing seriously after the destruction of the Second Temple, because they were spared. They were not under the rule of the Greek Empire or the Roman Empire, and they did not have to endure the same persecutions that Jews in Eretz Israel went through. It was not all rosy. There were difficulties in Bavel as well. There were massacres by King Shapur the second, by others. But relatively, Jews were able to live more peacefully under the rule of the Persian Empire, the Parthians. Afterwards, it was a little more difficult under the Zoroastrians, which are mentioned in the Talmud as Habarim or Ovdei Ha'esh, those who worship fire. There was an institution called Rosh HaGolah, Resh Galuta, the Exilarch, that still exists today. Believe it or not, there is an Iraqi family, the Dangur family. One of their descendants live in London, and he, for some reason, holds the title of Exilarch, Resh Galuta. I think he does it because he wants to bring together the Iraqi diaspora. They were at the height of the Jewish community in Bavel. The Babylonian Talmud was created. Later on, the masters, the leaders of the yeshivot in Bavel, led a campaign against the Talmud of Eretz Israel in order to establish themselves as the only authority. And during, you could say, from the 5th, 6th century on, up until almost the 12th century, the heads of the academies in Bavel were the center of the Jewish world. There were other centers. There were centers in Eretz Israel, there were centers in Italy, but they were really, up until you could say the 10th century, then it started dwindling, they held the keys to Jewish knowledge. If you had questions in halakha, today, most Jews would either ask their community rabbi or Rabbi Google, which usually is faster and more accurate. But back in the day, you had to use real mail, and therefore, you send your question to the academies in Bavel. It would travel with camels, with ships. There's a tremendous amount of literature, of correspondence that was salvaged from the Geniza in Cairo, and is still being deciphered by their volumes written by Goiten and by many Israeli scholars on this correspondence that sheds light on life in Baghdad at the time. Bavel, usually people traveled also to Babylonia from Spain, from Morocco. It was a hub. There were at that time in the let's go back 1 second to those letters coming from all over the world, right? If back in the day you asked a question, you have a question halakha, right? What do I do if a piece of meat fell into my dairy dish, right? So you send this question to Babylonia. By the time it comes back, your food is not edible anymore. If it was milk, it turned to yogurt, and then to aged cheese, and then probably you can eat anymore. But it was good enough for the future. But those questions paved the ground for some major works. For example, the Jews of Lucena or Alisana in Spain asked, how do we say 100 brachot daily? And the rabbi in Bavel, Rav Natronai Gaon, wrote a letter back. These are the 100 brachot. That became the skeleton for the future Sidur. Later on, Rav Amram Gaon, Rav Saadia Gaon wrote their own Sidurim. they produced a lot of literature, but they were a bit controlling. They wanted to keep knowledge and wisdom all in Babel, but naturally over time the floodgates were open, and there were scholars everywhere, and communities in Spain and in Germany broke free and became independent. But one of the most important elements of that period, of the period of the Geonim, which for me comes to define also Sephardic culture, is their open-mindedness and their acceptance and embrace of the culture around them. And I say that it's part of the Sephardic culture because even when, with the demise of the Iraqi or the Bavli, they were not Iraqi at the time, Bavli or Baghdadi centers, even with their demise, their students continued this, their disciples continued their way, their path in North Africa and in Spain. And when I say they embraced the culture around them, it meant Greek science and philosophy that was translated into Arabic, the love of poetry, the pursuit of grammar, writing encyclopedias, uh, being involved, engaged in all aspects of life. Part of it was because they lived under the rule of Islam, that was not as threatening. I think we discussed it when we spoke about the Aqidah. For those of you who attended this class, but because the surrounding culture was not as threatening as Christianity, they felt more comfortable connecting to it, and because Islam in its early days was a religion that, I mean, after the initial stage of conquering and assimilating into them into the Arabian nation, other nations and their culture, there was an amazing development of thirst for knowledge, of preserving ancient knowledge, science, art, literature, etc. And they were part of all that. At that time, also, there was a group of people called the Radhani merchants who traveled far and wide. And for a while, people didn't know where the Radhani were from. There were theories that they were from Europe or from Syria, but eventually we won, okay, the Iraqis, something I could be proud of. The Radhani merchants were Iraqi Jews from a region called Radhan in Iraq, who traveled the whole world for business. They went to Europe, they went to China, they went to India. They established communities in India and China, in Aden. They were in their descriptions from that time. They say those are people who spoke 6 or 7 languages, European languages, Far Eastern languages. It's amazing time for those communities. And then in the somewhere in the 1200s or 1300s, the community dwindled because of persecutions. People fled either to Central Asia, to Iran. Many went to Morocco, some to Spain, and the community for about, I think, almost 400 years was very passive. You don't hear much from Baghdad until the 17th century, where there's a revival. Some scholars came from Syria under the Ottoman Empire. The community started flourishing later on with certain laws that the Ottoman Empire passed that allowed some religious independence to the communities. They thrived, and they became the community in Bavel became one of the most powerful and important communities in the 19th and 20th century. Many great scholars in the field of religious literature, and also many great scholars and scientists, mathematicians, authors that are spread today all over the world. There are Iraqi communities in besides Israel. There are great centers in London, in Los Angeles, and in some in the Far East. I mean, not so many now in the Far East, but remnants. That is a result of the migration that started in the 1850s under at the time of the British Empire. Iraqi Jews first went to India. From India, they spread There were little communities, little pockets in China, in Indonesia, in Burma, in Japan, the Philippines, Singapore, uh, everywhere in the Far East. There were Iraqi families. Actually, my great grandfather, who's I think whose photo maybe will share with you as part of the was offered a position over chief rabbi of the Iraqi community in India, but he refused and he decided instead to go to Eretz Israel. Thank God. I'm happy that he came to Eretz Israel. And that is, I mean, there's a lot to talk about Baghdad. Unfortunately, not much to see, I think, on the ground today after the devastating wars. But the website that Dini mentioned before and the project of the American Sephardic Federation, Diana, was able to preserve a lot of the what they call digital maps, pictures, photos, and inscriptions from the time. So I think that is good as an introduction. What do you say, Didi?
I think that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Would you and Don introduce us to a little bit of the music of
Let me drink
Iraq?
my chai. Okay. So Dan, should we say a word about Yari Bon Alam before? Okay. So Yari Bon Alam. I think everybody knows this song, right? This poem is beautiful. Yari Bon Alam, but I'm not going to sing it with this tune, right? Um, it's a beloved tune. Everybody sings it. It's a Shabbat song, written by Rabbi Israel Najara, who traveled between Damascus, Gaza, and Tzafat, which I think if you want to go and retrace his footsteps, you should limit yourself to Tzfat. You know, you could skip Gaza and Damascus for now. You know, keep it for a safer future. He was very familiar with Arabic music. He wrote many poems, hundreds of poems, and many of them became very popular and beloved. And this particular one, I think he wrote in a way that alliterates the Arabic original, not only in the sounds. I sang it once with a mixed, a band that had Arabic-speaking musicians, and they said, "Are you singing in Arabic?" I said, "No." He said, "Why do you think that I sing in Arabic?" And so I started listening to myself to the words. I said, "Oh, I'm singing Yari Bon Alam ve Almaya in Arabic. Almaya means on the water." So it ranked to them as written in Arabic. And then I found that there's a morning prayer in Arabic that says the same exact words as the first line of Yari Bon Alam ve Almaya. Master of the world, you are the King of kings. And in Arabic, Ya Rab al-Alamin, Intahu Sultan al-Salatin. So the next time I sang it with a band, I sang the first line in Arabic. I think that was the way of Abu Sayyid Najara to create a cultural bridge with his neighbors. يا ربنا على المايا أنتم مليخ ملخايا.
عبدك بورتا بيتي مايا شفار قدماي يا حبايا يا رب العالم بالمايا أنتم ملكا إلغم الخيام شبحين أسدين سفرة برمشا لا خلاك دي شادي برا كل نفشا عيرنا كديشي وبنينا شا حيباد برا في عوف الشمايا يا رب العالم ذي علمايا أنتم مالكا إلغم الخيام رفرفين عبدك متاكفين مكي خريمة يا زكي كيفي فين لو يا حجيبة شيني الفين لا يقول جيبوا بحوش بنايا رب العالم في علمايا أنتم ملك من الخيام
That was beautiful. That was really beautiful. I am going to
Yeah, thank you.
done and I'm going to there we go. Okay. Can you see me or are we seeing you done?
Sorry?
I'm not sure what the view is, but okay.
I think you spotlighted me.
Yes, there we go. Okay. So we're interested in knowing how if you tried the recipe for tabit or tanuri. I want to show you what Andy made for us tonight. The inspiration from the recipe that Penny Raffaele shared with us. This is our vegetarian version that Andy made tonight. But if anybody tried the original recipe and you want to share with us how it turned out, let us know. Just unmute yourself. Or if you have any questions about the recipe for Rav Chaim. What do you think? Rav Chaim, when's the last time you made this dish?
First of all, I'm vegetarian now.
Like ours.
Uh, the last time I did it, I did it with meat. And see, I'm sort of in charge of making the tabit at home, even though my wife knows the recipe. She does it well. Um, for me, it's like a childhood, childhood memory. It's like comfort food, Shabbat morning. That's our cholent. The tabit. It literally means to sleep over. Tabit in Arabic, like so, it sleeps over the fire. My aunt had what is called primus, a little gas stove, not gas. What is it? kerosene, right? The kerosene stove. So it had like even more interesting flavor there, or smell associated with it. But the really what gives it the special flavor and aroma is the combination of spices. That if you want a shortcut, you could buy them in what is called baharat for hamin. Here's the Indian influence. Baharat is the Indian word for a mix of spices. So you could buy baharat of hamin, or if you're a purist, you will mix your own. You use rosebuds, cloves, cardamom, and cinnamon. Those are the spices, and in the mix you put chopped onions, tomatoes, parsley. It's beside the rice and the ground beef. So it's an interesting mixture. The caveat is my mother sometimes used whole cardamom, and yeah, and it was very bad if you fell on one, because it's extremely bitter when you bite into it. It's extremely bitter, but it's tastier. So we found a solution by using spice bags or tea bags, the reusable tea bags,
Right.
and put them in and use it in that manner. Um, what else? Oh, so people were asking about chicken, right? Yeah. So the original recipe calls for a whole chicken. You have to stuff it in, and you have to spread the rice around it. It's messy. It is messy. It's like they say in Hebrew, balagan. So there's an easy there's an easy way around it. It's called cooking bags. What I mean, if you don't want to use plastic in your pots, which is understandable, you could use cheesecloth and just put the rice and everything in it. If you're going to eat chicken, then put chicken pieces around it. And if you're a vegetarian, just do the rice with the spices. You could use the Beyond Burger or something like that if you need meat substitute. And if you could live without that, it's delicious as is. Just rice, vegetables, and spices. But in any case, it would sit all night on the plata, as we call it in Israel, and you get up in the morning. We would used to pray very early, 9:30. 9:30 would finish, and then it's not as heavy as the chun, so you eat it in the morning, and that's it. It's beautiful. It's tasty. Yeah.
So it looks like some people are saying that the recipe came out well. Good. Yeah. Interesting question whether there are. Claim we lost the video. Are you? Can you still hear us?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
You're here. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Are there any other foods or recipes that are considered staples of Iraqi Jews?
Oh, there are a lot of there are many interesting foods. One of them became very popular recently in Israel, and it's called kuba selek. Kuba, appears in different shapes all over the Middle East. It's basically meatballs rolled in an envelope of some grain. The Iraqis Iraqi cuisine has meatballs or whatever wrapped in either semolina, rice, burgul, or potatoes. So they are called kuba burgul, kuba aruk bruz, kuba, and kuba pateta, which is kuba with a potato envelope. My family's favorite is the one with beets, kuba selek, that has a sweet sour touch to it. You cook the beets, make it soup with the celery, onion, garlic, and mint, and you add sugar and lemon juice, and it's just delicious. But a lot of the Iraqi cuisine was actually influenced by the Indian cuisine. So the sweet and sour, and also the pickled mango called amba are a staple in the Iraqi cuisine. Yeah, but I must confess that since I'm married to someone of Moroccan descent, I gave up most of my Iraqi cuisine for the Moroccan cuisine, which is superior. I can't. Yeah, if my Iraqi family would have heard me now, I would be that.
There was a
Keep it quiet between us. Yeah.
there's a question about other breakfast foods. If you didn't wake up in the morning with an appetite for rice and meat, what else do you do to start the day in the breakfast?
So no, I mean, as I grew up in Israel, so basically, on a regular day it was just, cheese, cottage and pita or something like that. But my father told me that when, as a kid in Iraq, he used to eat summanai, which were like baguettes, bread baked with butter, and that would go with kemar, which he tried to recreate it for us in Israel. It was something like cottage cheese with honey, or or like maybe like dulce de leche, but without the caramel. But the other thing that you would have in the morning before you go to shul was what is called ka'ak, or the sesame sesame salty bagels, and little bagels, and also the bigger ones are just soft baked, which is delicious. And in the winter, we would leave on the plata next to the hamin, next to the tibit, a pot with, and then you could try at home, vegetarian dish, delicious. Some wait, the word escaped me. How do you say down lefet in Hebrew? What, it's not radishes, beets and, okay, it will come to me.
Turnip.
Turnips. So
Turnip,
thank you,
yeah.
Sarah. Yeah, turnips. I haven't used this word in a while. It's funny. I think of the word in Spanish, nabo. So turnips and beets. Mainly turnips, like 5 or 6 turnips, and 1 beet to give color. You could put also tea bags and leave it overnight, and it's just it has like a sort of like umami flavor. And you get up in the morning, it's cold, Yerushalayim, you take it out of the pot, you eat it like with a cup of tea. That was it's like the healthy candy,
You take
better than sour belts.
any
And
other questions for Rav Chaim about our recipe for tonight's main course, or anything else relating to
The crispy rice, the crispy part of the rice, getting it at the bottom of the pot
oh
so that it's crispy and then you put it on top. That to me is the best part of that.
yes, it is. Yeah, it's called uh, in Arabic, it's called mahqouq. It's like it's burnt and or mahruk. It's burnt and stuck to the bottom of the. But today there's a shortcut. If there's a, I don't think there's in New York, but in my area in LA, there are stores by Persian immigrants, Iranian immigrants. They have crock pots, not crock pots, rice cookers that crisp your rice at the bottom.
One of those. You get the instant.
Yeah, yeah. It's called in Persian. It's called tadir, tadir, and this is called considered a delicacy. So yeah.
Nice.
But if you want to recreate it at home, basically you add a little bit more oil to the bottom of the pot and you leave it on low heat for a long time, so then it crisps.
Nice. So I hope everyone is going to dig in and enjoy their meal as Rav Chaim tells us a little bit more, perhaps on a more personal level, about
Okay.
his life in Baghdad. Let's have
Okay. So, like I said, I didn't grow up in Baghdad. My father was born in Baghdad, and he had a lot of interesting stories about them. A lot of them was, were with, what do you know? Like when I was a kid, I used to get 5 gurush for, to spend. But back in the day, this was like, and the sumanai, the baguettes that I told you about. Of course, they were so long. That you show the measure of the things with your hand. They used to go sail on the on the river, on the Euphrates, or the Diglat, which is the Arabic name for the Tigris, Hidekel. It's from they used to float on it with boats that looked basically like the like inflating pools made of leather. They look like round boats that people would sit and fish. Allegedly, there was tremendous, wonderful fish in the Hidekel. My father, so let's start with my mother was born in Baghdad, but her father at the time wasn't there. the her family came. Okay, so let's go back. My mother's family came to Baghdad. One side of the family came from Syria in the 1700s. Rabbi Nawi, that later became settled in and became a prominent Iraqi family. And from on her side of the family, there were many scholars, rabbis, poets. They opened the first publishing house in Baghdad. Had relatives in India, in Egypt, and other places. And my grandfather was very active, as a very active Zionist, and he traveled to Israel several times. And the last time he traveled, he was afraid to go back because he was wanted by the government. So he stayed in Israel. He was already married. His wife was pregnant, my grandmother, and he didn't know what was going on with her. There was no way to communicate. But when she gave birth to my mother in 1934, my mother was born in 1934. 3 weeks after my mother was born, my grandmother took her, and with the aid of smugglers, with jeeps, was driven to Syria, to Aleppo, where she slept in the police station one night, and then from there she traveled to Israel. My father actually met my paternal great grandfather when he was a kid in Baghdad, because everybody would go see him and was a great scholar. And but he lived in Baghdad till the age of 17. At that point, he was about to be recruited to the Iraqi army. It was 1949, after the establishment of the State of Israel. He knew that as a Jew in the Iraqi army, it's not going to fare well, and he escaped. It was very dangerous. There were other people who tried to escape at the same time, were captured by the Iraqis and were tortured. So he had to stage his escape in a way. I mean, he took a great risk. He went as with nothing, as to visit relatives in Iran, and he went through the Iranian border. From that time, I still remember the names of the cities that he visited. He kept telling me that he went to Khorramshahr, and then to Qasar Shirin, and then he went to Tehran, where he was in a camp, in a transition camp for 6 months, until the people of the Sukhnut helped him to go to Israel. A lot of stories from that period, and he came to Israel and started working as a porter in the. I'm not sure if it was in Ben Gurion or in the seaport, but at a certain point where immigrants were coming from Iraq, he helped translate to Arabic, and they realized that he could be a good translator between the Arabic and the Hebrew, and he ended up serving in the army as an intelligence officer for more than 30 years. My father passed away this past January, so it's still I'm within the year for him. So these words, Elu Lishmato. In a funny way, my mother told me about her trip to Syria as a baby, only a short while before she passed away. And I told her, you should have told me that earlier. She said, why? I said, that with all the communities that I traveled throughout my life, I worked a lot with the Syrian community and with the Persian community. So I know that I worked with the Persian Iranian community, retracing my father's footsteps when he went to Iran. Now I understand that I also had to work with the Syrian community, retracing your steps when you went to Syria. But my father tells me that there were beautiful moments that he remembers from his childhood in Iraq. Also some dark moments where his brother and him. Here's an interesting story. His brother and him, my uncle, my father, were captured when they were accused of distributing flyers that support the state of Israel, and they were chased by a civilian, and eventually my father was able to escape, but my uncle was captured. My uncle was 18 at the time, and he was taken into custody. They treated him horribly, and he was really he was scared for his life. After one night in custody, he was scared for his life. The next day, they they come and they tell him, okay, get out of your cell. He was sure they're going to shoot him. He heard people being executed. So he went with them, all dreadful. Uh, he told me this a couple of months ago, so you realize he's still alive. He's 89 now. So he went with them, and they put him in a better cell, and they took him to a doctor to see, uh, to treat the injuries that he sustained the previous day when he was arrested, and he did not know what was going on with him. Um, then the next day he was brought to the judge. The judge asked, "Okay, who arrested him?" And they said it's this civilians who accused him and brought him here. And the judge turned to the civilian and says, "Are you a police? Are you a policeman?" He says, "No. So it's not your role to arrest people. It's not your duty. You have nothing to say here. Go home." And to my uncle, he turned to him and say, "You're free. You could go home." And that was a mystery. He didn't understand what was going on until he got what was happening until he got home, and he heard that when he was arrested, his mother made a phone call to the, I don't remember now, it was the attorney general or the judge or someone high up, and she said, "My son has been arrested, and I need you to help me." And that person was in charge of helping my uncle to be released. Now, what was the connection between my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, and that person? Turns out that, and that was something that I just heard, like I said, a couple of months ago after my father passed away. I went to visit my uncle, and he told me this story. Uh, my grandmother lost a child when her first child. She lost that child when he was still very young, a little baby, and at the same time, her Muslim neighbor gave birth but was unable to feed the baby. So my grandmother took that baby and nursed him because as she was, mourning for her child, she was able to feed the other child, and she became his milk mother. That's it was called in Arabic, milk mother for that child. That child grew up to be that officer high up, either the attorney general or the judge, that my grandmother called to say that her son was arrested. So this was a kind of a really amazing story to hear. Um, and other than that, leading a life of, Iraq of the 1930s, before the rise of Nazi Germany that had influence over the Iraqis, and despite of the stories that we hear about the Farhud, there was a Farhud, there were pogroms in Iraq, but there's no comparison to what happened in Europe. There were several hundred victims. It was scary, but my father tells me that their Muslim neighbors protected them with their bodies. They said, "You don't enter our neighborhood," and they fought back as well. But up until like 1935, it was quite peaceful life for Jews there. They went to the movie theater when new movies of Muhammad Abdul Wahab came from Egypt. They wanted to see it and to hear the music. But in 1951, 1952, the community basically ceased to exist. After the establishment of the state of Israel, it was very difficult to stay there. The government offered Jews, where anyone who wants could go to, could get is allowed to leave. But only after people registered, they found out that they're going to be deprived of all of their properties. They owned land, they owned real estate. There were very, very wealthy Jews among the Jews of Iraq. A lot of the palaces of Saddam Hussein are built on land that belongs to Jews. There's actually an organization called Jimena, Jews indigenous to the Middle East and North Africa, that is working on sort of getting reparations from Iraq, which I don't think will happen. Um, and they had to leave like basically with nothing. Most of them went to Israel. Some of them went to London and to Los Angeles, where they have already people from the community. And significant group went to Tehran, where the government was friendly to Jews, and stayed there until 1980s when they had to leave because of the revolution. So that's part of the story. Yeah. Any questions on that? Or music?
How about if you and Don introduce us to another piece of music, and then we'll open up for some discussion.
Okay. Okay. Let me put this easier.
Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yes. Okay. This song is also by Rabbi Israel Najara. It's called Ya'arat Devash Al Leshonech. Unlike the other song, I think it's most people are not familiar with it. So I'll translate. Ya'arat Devash Al Leshonech Levana Kalevana ערבו לי שירי הגיונך, פצחי לי שיר ורננה, עתה אמיר לך זמנך, אחרי בלותך עדנה, שושנה אגדיל ששונך, שושנה רעננה. The words, the lyrics are in the genre that Rabbi Israel Najara writes a lot in, which is a dialogue between God and the people of Israel. Am Yisrael is described as a woman, God's beloved, and he sings her a love song. He says there's a honeycomb, like Devash v'chalav tachat leshonech. There is a honeycomb on your tongue. You're beautiful like the moon. I love your songs. Sings for me. I will change your situation, meaning redemption, and I will bring you great joy. And he plays on the words Sason and Shoshana, joy, Sason, Shoshana, rose. And this is a song that is sung in joyous occasions, but also on Shabbat, is a song of longing and hope for redemption. And the melody is probably local or borrowed from a Turkish origins. Dan?
يعرض ديباش على لشونك لبناك لبنا عربوا لي شير جيونك Shoshana حوت لي منوحو شانانو ومشكي نود بمدامي أدرعياتي بين بانو كشوشانات بين حوحيم يخيبوا خيبوا لعنون بكل عيب فينا عين يا ليلي يا عين ما رحيل السفني خساف إلى لبابي وبنو يلي تلبيو شمق بتيغ ماشي بمعونو عدنا نتساحل وعزبك يونالي حير بيونا يارت دفاش على ليشوني لبناك
Wow, Reb Chaim Dunn, that was absolutely beautiful. Just beautiful. There were some questions in the chat to start us off on our opportunity to talk a little bit together and ask some questions. There were some inquiries about the cultural overlap in terms of the musical traditions. So I want to leave you both up there to perhaps comment on that. If you look in the chat, you'll see questions about
Let me look at the chat.
some of the broader cultures to even what you just played.
I'll answer.
Dan.
Yeah, I saw some questions there. Chaim, you know, I think your speakers are feeding back in, so we're hearing the sound double. Or you can mute while I talk. Yeah, great. So I think one question was about Andalusia, and I mean that whole region is interconnected for sure, just geographically, and also years of Ottoman rule that influenced both, I think, music in religious context and, of course, not religious context. And in terms of Andalusia, the Spanish area of Andalusia, the Gitanos, the Spanish gypsies, credit Muslims and Jews who lived there pre-Inquisition as being a lot of the roots of flamenco music. But to be honest, what Rabbi Chaim and I are doing is pushing the envelope a little bit. It's like taking branches that were definitely connected when the tree was young and then grew pretty far apart, and then saying, well, something there is still in common. Can we bridge the gap? And it takes someone who knows the music as well as Rabbi Chaim, and also comes with an open mind and flexibility to be able to do this. Because we are stretching, he is stretching the tradition a little bit, and I am stretching, Andalusian tradition a little bit to find the common ground. And I think this was wonderful. We're also doing this on Zoom, so we don't exactly know what you are hearing because of the delay in the sound. But I think I had a feeling it turned out nice. So that was my opinion.
It was beautiful done. It was
Thank you.
gorgeous. Rav Chaim, do you want to add anything to the question about music before we open up?
We have to unmute, Chaim.
Yeah, I know. I was waiting for. Yeah, I just want my speaker to feed into your. Yes. First of all, like Dan said, the cultures are connected. That's why I mentioned that during the height of what is called, Andalusia, the Convivencia, the Golden Age in Spain, Jews were traveling back and forth. The first famous Sephardic poet, Dunash ben Labrat, who wrote the very famous Deror Ikra Leven Imbat, traveled between Spain, Morocco, and Iraq. That was a route. If you were a poet, a musician, a merchant, from the 7th century to the 12th century, you would have a residence, or at least acquaintances in those three cities. So definitely there's a connection. I also have show you something. This is a sidur that I have. See, it says Sidur Tfilat Yesharim Im Sharah Arabi. Is a sidur translated to Arabic, and I have a similar one with the Haggadah, and it says Kefir Nahug, as is the custom in India and in Iraq and all that. And this whole sidur is translated to Arabic, to Judeo-Arabic. See at the bottom, Sharah fil Arabi. So, for example, it's written in Hebrew letters. So, for example, if you look at the blessing of Elohai Neshama Shenatata Bi Tehora, or what? Maybe I'll take something that's really very, very famous. Shema Israel Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, right? So you have here the translation: Isma Israel Allahna Allah Wahad Mubarak Asam Jalat Sultanat Wal Dahr Wal Abad. So people spoke Arabic. That was part of the tefillah. Definitely, the music was an area where people interacted, and there are Jewish songs in this book of Iraqi songs with words in Arabic that would move from Shirei Kodesh. For example, one such song is sung in happy occasions called Tzuri Goalia, and it goes like Tzuri Goalia, Tzuri Goalia. When I have it, we'll create a reverb for it, Dan. So the song in Hebrew, the words are Tzuri Goalia, Hahesh Ve'avi Ya'ala Yafifia, right? So that Tzuri Goalia, Ma'ira Ve'ahesh Bedut Ya'ala Yafifia, Tzuri Goalia, So it was a song that was sung in weddings, and basically, God, please redeem us, the beautiful gazelle who is in the diaspora. And then it became also a song of pilgrimage, and the pilgrimage song is called Qunnag Yom Al Ahad, on the first day we traveled to this city, and the second day we traveled to this city, and on the last day they finish, and instead of those religious words that say please save us, they end with we arrived at our destination. We sat at the side of the road. It's on Shabbat. So I read the Arabic word. قلنا يوم الشبت وقعدنا في المتنة في ظل البساتين. We sat near the basatin, which is a plural for bustan, near the orchards. صار الفنجان يدير المزام مرطبة. The coffee is boiling. We put the maza, you know, the orduf. طيور وعصافير. The birds were singing. فستق بندق جوز ولوز والسمكة مكلية. Pistachio, hazelnuts, almonds, and walnuts, and fried fish. So they sing it. كنا غيوم الشابات وقعدنا في المتنا بالصاد البساطين صار الفنجان يضر المزم الرطيبة طيور وعصافير فستق بندق جوز ولوز والسمكة مكلية. So that you have the combination, of the Arabic and the Hebrew there.
It's so fascinating. Okay. So, hearing more and more stories, there's more questions that have come in.
Maybe I'll stay with this.
Everyone, I want to invite everyone to share with us where you're coming from. Perhaps where you're sitting tonight, where you've joined us from, where your family is from. And let's take a few more questions for Reb Chaim or for Dan.
I see one question on the chat, so maybe I'll answer it first.
Yes, thank you.
From Lisa, I see, did my family ever discuss the treatment upon arrival to Israel and how it impacted their impression of Israel, giving them abarot, lack of access to jobs and education because they were deemed Mizrahi? Yeah, this is a topic that I write about a lot. I actually wrote a piece for the American Sephardic Federation and for Sephardic Horizon Journal about the term Mizrahi in Sephardic. We were very adamant in Israel, in my home, not to use the term Mizrahi because it was a derogatory term created in Israel. We were Sephardic, and within Sephardic we were Iraqi. My father was a social activist who established an organization for the inclusion of academics from Iraq in the Israeli institutions. It's called Akademai Morlei Bavel. He eventually he was a partial success, but my sister is now a professor of Jewish philosophy and Kabbalah in Ben Gurion University. I knew about the discrimination. I knew about difficulties for Sephardic or Mizrahi Jews, as they call them in Israel. My father passed through the Ma'abara, but I think I was lucky to grow up in a household with a lot of pride. As I said, my grandfather was a scholar, a social activist, very, very committed to Zionism. So, on one hand, he denounced the evils, or the unfair treatment that the Iraqi and Sephardic Jews received in Israel. On the other hand, we never felt like victims. We felt like we know where we come from, we know what we have. Situation is not stellar right now, but we are proud of what we have. But yeah, there was a serious problem in Israel, no question. But my siblings all went, each one in his or her way, to do something about it. One of them, my oldest sister Hannah, established an orchestra that plays classical Arabic and Sephardic music, and they're just doing amazing things in Israel, called Firkat Tanur. I think I mentioned them last time. Yeah. Anyway, I just entered this question, so.
Yeah, I think you should maybe mention about that orchestra that I think almost all of the people who play in it are not professional musicians. Or at least originally they have
the founders are not. Yeah,
I see, and they have all sorts of professions, but this is part of a roots rediscovery of roots of things they heard at their grandparents' homes and they're back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If anyone has a question for Reb Chaim, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and share your thoughts.
Hey, Rabbi, it's Nathaniel.
Hi, Nathaniel.
Hey, I had a question of coffee. You know how certain places have a thing for coffee, you know, Turkish coffee, Iranian coffee, so on and so forth. How about the Iraqi tradition, or is it just coffee?
It's tea. The Iraqis are big tea drinkers. My father used to drink, so there are two different influences. One is the British influences. So my father used to drink tea with milk, and I do it sometimes also. And then there's the Persian influence, and that means tea with cardamom, which is also delicious. Try now. I got. You can be again a purist and put real cardamom into your tea, or just get the tea bags with cardamom from Ahmad Tea, from London. Ahmad Tea. It just burns my ears. Sorry.
Ruth, did you have a question? Unmute yourself. Ask away. If someone has a question. Ruth?
Maybe you, Dini, maybe you have a question about Iraq.
I do.
So,
Hello, can you,
oh, someone.
yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Is this
yes, we can hear you.
recorded? And might we have an opportunity to see it again or to share it?
Oh,
Sorry.
the question was whether it's recorded.
Yes. The session is recorded, so we'll be happy if anyone would like to see afterward.
Oh, wonderful, thank you.
I maybe I want to add more to the what we spoke before about music. The musical tradition of Iraq is really extraordinary. In the 20th century, most of there were several conferences or the Congress of Arabic Music, and the Iraqi delegation was always composed of mostly Jews. They were sometimes the percussionist were not Jewish, because the drummer or the qaqin were considered a lower of lower status, so Jews didn't do it. And also and Dan knows it. We spoke a lot about what the Iraqi Jewish musical tradition has to offer. There are hundreds of tunes. Some of them are borrowed from the local cultures, some from Turkish cultures, but many of them probably going back way, to the first documented musical tradition from Iraq, not audio but descriptive, is that of Benjamin Mitudela, the traveler, who describes how in a bit sarcastic, how the cantors in Baghdad are fighting over who would lead the tune. They have choirs, but he describes how they would sing each verse of the psalm Mizmor Shir Le'Yom HaShabbat in a different scale. The Arabic scales are very intricate. They are different than the Western scales. And this is a tradition that is preserved until today, interestingly enough, not by the Iraqi Jews, but by Syrian Jews. But it's part of the same continuum, and they still sing when they read the Bakashot early Shabbat morning. They would read the Mizmor Shir Le'Yom HaShabbat, each verse with a different scale. If you want to hear, for example, they would sound like Mizmor Shir Le'Yom HaShabbat. That is a scale called Rast. טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך העליון. It's a different scale called Ajam. להגיד בבוקר חסדיך ואמונתך בלילות. So that's interesting tradition. That's the makam is called Nahwan. So the cantors had an opportunity to show their prowess, and everybody would enjoy and participate. And And like Dan knows, we talk about this, the Arabic music in many ways is like jazz music. It's participatory. There's room for improvisation. The audience take active part. Even the classical pieces are like that. So in a classic song by Kulthum called Inta Umri, You Are My Life, you could hear the band playing the introduction. And then when they finish the intro, the instrumental intro, the crowd explodes in cheers and applause, and they stop and they go all the way to the beginning. And so like this is like sort of built in, we will play it again, let you enjoy, and then we'll go play again. So
you could say a word about your own personal exposure to like Arabic, the discipline of Arabic classical music. Like, because you're saying there's improvisation and there's freedom, yes, but you have a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience in it.
right. So I grew up, like I said, the influence, interestingly enough, in for the Iraqi Jews in the 20th century was that of Muhammad Abdul Wahab, who was an amazing composer, Egyptian, who started writing in I think his first movie was released in 1927, and people would go and wait, to listen to this music. He incorporated also some classical music. He even was, I think it was sued by Rachmaninoff for plagiarism, but Rachmaninoff passed away before this came to fruition. But there is the Arabic music, even though in the way it is performed, like I said, it's participatory and there's room for improvisation. But there are rules, there are traditions, there are clear concepts. It can be written with notes the same way that Western music is written. So I'll give you maybe a short story of that. I grew up hearing a lot of music. I knew all of the Iraqi tradition, and I knew all of this intricate Muhammad Abdul Wahab music. And then I was offered a position as a cantor in a synagogue in Yerushalayim. I was 21. It wasn't my tradition. It was a Syrian tradition. And I thought, okay, I could wing it, as they say, right? I could, I know they sing this tune here and this tune there. I could make it work. So I went there and I did my first prayer as a cantor, not in my grandfather's shul, was Arvit Shel Shabbat. And the makam, the scale, was one called Nawa, which is between two other scales, Nawan and Siga. So I did whatever I could. And after the tefillah, an elderly gentleman comes to me and says, "Your Nawa, I don't know what it was. It was Nahawan, it was Siga." And he says in Hebrew, my advice to you is, "Im ata lo yodea la'asot eze davar, al ta'aseh oto." If you don't know how to do something, don't do it. It was like, imagine, like I thought I knew how to sing, but he was so pedantic. Turns out he was a choir master, so I got my share. But the way I responded, I said, I really need to learn a lot. Would you teach me? And he became my teacher. So it was a good end for him.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
My name's Tony. When you sing, you have a tone to your voice that's, I don't know, have the musical vocabulary, maybe help me, Dan, but it sounds a little bit nasal to the Western ear, and it's not, it's a deep tone. And when I was in Turkey, I would hear the call to prayer a lot, and it sounds very much like that. Is Arabic music influenced by that call to prayer, or is the call to prayer influenced by Arabic music? Do you know what I'm talking about? Does that sound familiar to you?
Dan, you want to answer? Or?
Dan, do you know what I'm talking about?
I think we both know, but I'll let Chaim go ahead.
Okay, so yes, of course, there's the Turkish is more nasal. Especially in certain makamat, they sing like Husseini. They would go like, oh,
yeah. Yes.
So they go from here. But you mean the call to prayer like Allahu Akbar, Allah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah. Western singers sing that way.
Yeah, but people So part, you remember that part of the tradition was the Quran reader, the muezzins, are experts on cantillation. And I grew up listening. Sometimes if I would switch channels as a kid, before there was Israeli TV, there was Jordanian TV, and I would see the qadi or the muezzin sitting, cross-legged with the Quran holder and going with this. I would sometimes linger there for a couple of minutes because it was fascinating how he would, control the words. It's Arabic is a beautiful language, and so yeah, it's a lot of influence there also.
Yeah, I also think the notion of head voice doesn't exist.
That's it. Thanks.
It
That was the
doesn't.
word.
It doesn't exist in the Middle East, in North Africa, in southern Spain. So what you're hearing is like a sound resonating up to here. It doesn't come from here. It's a much more earthy, deep sound,
Right.
and that's what you'll hear all over those regions. And it's also not chest voice. It's like resonating here. A lot of, yeah, I don't want to say nasal because to me it doesn't exactly sound I mean, there are people who sing nasally, but that's not what I'm hearing. I'm just hearing this very full, beautiful sound. But it's not. It doesn't go up here. It's not like operatic influences. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to say one more word about the music. Just that when Rabbi Chaim is describing the disciplines of classical Arabic or classical Middle Eastern music, this is a discipline that is shared across the Middle East and parts of North Africa, and even parts of the Balkans. And so when we get together to make music with people from those places, like even if they've obviously never heard many of these prayers or liturgical poetry, but it's very, very easy for them to immediately pick up if they're good musicians and they know the discipline. It's this universal way of communicating. And when you think about the fact that Rabbi Chaim was not born in that, he's born in Israel, which is officially part of the region, but where most of us did not grow up learning this musical discipline. So his is really coming one or two generations removed, but studying it very deeply, and he's able to communicate in this universal language with people who come from Turkey or Macedonia or Baghdad or Damascus, or Cairo. It's just a fascinating thing to experience.
In Pakistan also. I did Qawwali with Pakistani singers. It was amazing. Yeah.
We're gonna close our program in just a few moments with another musical piece from Chaim and from Dan. If you look through the chat, you'll see we are gathered here from across North America. You are all here from different places in the United States and Canada. And if you look at the chat as well, after I asked people to share where their families are from, we are literally gathering the world. We are representing families who have found their way across the globe. When Rav Chaim and I decided to do this program together, one of the most important motivations was to be able to bring Jewish community together. And we've done that tonight from many different corners of the cultural world, of the physical world, and it's a real honor to have you all with us. Some of you are from Sha'ar, some of you from Torah Ve'ahava, some of you from different networks. We are delighted and honored to be joining together for this very special program. I want to make sure to invite you all to join us on our next journey with the Armchair Pilgrim Supper Club, which will be on November 22nd, when we make our way to Mumbai. In the meantime, we don't have to wait that long to see each other. I invite you to join Sha'ar on Monday night on our Grand Waves program, during which Dan and I will come together for more beautiful music and deep Torah, highlighted by our guest this week, Nadav Greenberg, who is the chef at North Miznon. We'll talk with him about the pervasiveness of Israeli food throughout the world, and the trends that have given rise to that, and what comes next. On Wednesday night, I invite you to our Justice Beit Midrash, which will continue with exploring the theme of leadership in our country today. And finally, this coming Friday night, I invite you to join us for a Shabbat Tish. You'll see information about all of these programs in emails that will be coming out throughout the week. So I want to thank Rav Chaim and Dan once again. Thank you, Rav Chaim, for sharing with us
Thank you.
your scholarship, your stories, your amazing insights into what
Thank you.
brings Jewish life to life in the many, many ways that it has throughout the millennia, throughout the world. We're so excited to gather with you again and continue traveling, both externally and as you give us the chance to travel deeply inside of ourselves as Jews and to create the kind of coming together as we have tonight. Dan, as always, your music is just such a beautiful, beautiful way to elevate everything that we're doing. So we're going to let you finish off the night with this last piece of music. Thank you, everyone, again for.
Thank you. So this song is also by Rabbi Israel Najara, and it's written after a Sufi tradition, Turkish Sufi tradition. So there is a repetition of, you will hear, yen, 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 yen. Okay. The words are Yir'ad libi et shirege. يرعد لبي عاد شريك يدبق شن بشن إذا عربك يربوق حلي يدمي وداشن سمن قدو قدولات كونو يشوط حسن وشفلوتو أشرني مشان عفر ودشن روبي رفا فوت تسيفا رزي فداشن إنا قامي حد يعصر هدود العيرلو يا شين سمتي زودلين قد لبي صاريت سامن أبل نشانتي على هدين وضو اتآمل
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone. Laila
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dini. Thank you, everyone.
Laila Tov.
Thank you.
Lila Tov, everybody.
Thank you, Lila Tov.
Lila Tov, everybody.
Lila Tov.
Lila Tov.
Lila Tov.
Lila Tov, thank you.
I need to see a box ring. Take that